You ready? All right. Let's call this meeting to order. This is the Livingston Parish Ordinance Committee for Wednesday, August 10th, 2022. Ms. White, would you call the roll?
Mr. Girlinghouse?
Here.
Mr. Mack? Here. Mr. Talbert?
Here.
Mr. Ord?
Here.
All right, old business. We're going to do some tinkering on 125. All right. We got it right here.
Planning is asking for a little bit of clarification, plus some other things we need to add in.
All right, so I know I had been brought to our mind about the boulevard entrance and wanted to define it a little more. I think in what I had read that it does actually give a width of the road. It doesn't give the width of how big the median needs to be. So let me read here. Blah, blah, blah. So we define the each side to be like 20 feet. We want to go 10 foot on the median, just in case we have to pull off. If someone needs to pull off on the median part, you need to be at least as wide as I would say, a fire truck.
The issue is if you turn it around, if your median's only 10 foot, you're hanging out in a lane.
So you want to go 15?
I mean, I think you got to do something. You can't have a 10-foot median and then have a car trying to make a U-turn in there, and then
I got you.
Can some of the medians can just be shrub, huh?
Grass, but what he's saying is if someone gets in sideways.
I mean, let's say,
Yeah.
we're talking about a situation here that if you do this on our ordinance, you've got to go till you reach lot 200. So the boulevard has to go as far into the subdivision as you get to 200 lots, which is where you would have to have the second road. So we're giving the boulevard credit for 2 roads. If you have a crossroad in there, and you're gonna cross that median, then if the median's only 10 foot wide, if you go halfway, your vehicle is hanging out into the next road lane. So Bill, you wanna comment on DOT standard on what a median width is on some of these roads? What's the median width on 16? 15, 20 feet?
I say
I think that's good.
Okay, so we're gonna add with a 15-foot median?
Yes.
Okay.
You guys got that, Shane?
Boulevards are the entrance to a subdivision, shall minimum of 2 20-foot lanes and a 15-foot median.
Okay, just to say, in this road section, where y'all wrote that in, it says it has to be a 4-lane boulevard. Eliminate an entrance. Do y'all want?
Correct.
Do y'all want to go ahead and add that to the note?
Yes, that's the intent.
Is 2 20-foot lanes enough to put 4 cars on, Billy?
we have 10-foot lanes.
Okay, 2
Yeah.
10-foot lanes is enough? You don't need, okay.
Yeah,
Right now, the parish standards for open is
Okay, so we have 40 foot we have 40 foot of asphalt and 15-foot buffer in the medium as a median that we can run 2 cars in and 2 cars out on that deal.
yeah, was that what I had intended.
Okay.
Okay, just want to
Any
clarify.
discussion from the audience? You vote on that separately, think?
Yeah, it'd probably be better if we did them
Okay.
each separate, huh? Or would you rather them do them all at once?
Let's just go through them and we do it.
Let's
all
just
at
go
once.
through them, and if
Okay.
we have any problems, we can pull some out and vote on them individually, and then group the rest of them together.
Gotcha. So the next item would be submittal date when the plat goes before the Planning and Zoning Commission for a vote, stage 3.
That would be after all the studies are done.
Yeah.
That would be when the submittal started. That would be when your 60-day countdown according to state law occurred. All the studies would be done, it would then go before the planning commission. They would vote up or down on the deal, and the 60 days would start at that point in time.
That's what we pretty much,
That's what we want. We're just clarifying.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's what the-
This- we're just
I
giving
thought that's where we
planning.
were anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want to just basically clarify in the thing, so, any
So
questions?
they don't start counting 60 days till we get everything back.
Yes.
That's good.
Shane?
Totally good with that.
Stage 3.
What do we call that, stage 3?
Like like the 18th of the day before that, so the 18th of, let's say, for example, I'm going for my stage 3 vote on the first Wednesday of December. Then my submittal has to be in by the 18th of November. Is that the way that thing's set up, Ms. White?
No, it has to be like sent to the planning commission, and it has to be reviewed by Morgan, and all the comments have to be addressed before the 18th of the meeting that it's going on.
But but it's after the comments have been accepted that the date starts.
Yes.
So you can't send Morgan something that's got a bunch of, that y'all back and forth for 30 days, and that counts into 60 days. After y'all resolve the comments, then that's when the 30 days, that's when the 60
60 days
days
starts.
will begin.
Yeah, 60 days starts when you submit the plat with the studies to the planning commission.
Any discussion from the audience? Okay.
Okay, so we defined an exchange earlier, didn't we? Didn't we define an exchange?
Yeah, we defined exchange, but in the original ordinance, there's exclusions, and it's, the exchange of property is in there. We need to take that out. If you want an exchange of property to follow the minor resub protocol, I guess, then that would need to be removed.
Okay.
So you want to remove number 4?
Well, here's what happens. So ultimately, on a minor resub, the way it's set up now, we say if you re-subdivide it. Well, re-subdividing doesn't necessarily mean cutting a lot in half. You could put 2 lots back together, and it's still a resub. It's changing the original design. It's a resub of the property. Even though you're putting them back together, you're changing the original design. So the question is an exchange exempt? If I bought 2 acres for 2 acres, is that exchange exempt from the 2-year deal?
Well, if you didn't change the outlay of the property at all,
Well, so we're looking at, we're gonna talk about a situation tomorrow night where somebody bought 4 lots, put 2 of them, chose to put 2 together into one and 2 together in another, to create a situation to resub 14 lots. Chris says the 2 years should have applied to putting those 4 lots into 2. Planning hadn't looked at it the way they called that exchange, but that's really not exchange. An exchange is when I trade you 2 acres for 2 acres or something, and we don't create additional lot, we just change one lot for another lot. We don't create additional lots, we're just changing a piece of property out.
Yeah.
So the question is, are we gonna follow our definition of exchange and say that if I trade you 2 acres next door for 2 acres over here, do we allow that? I don't have an issue with that. As long as I don't create another lot. What I don't wanna do is is change the number of lots that we started with and then not have the 2 years apply. I can't swap 2 acres for 2 acres of yours and then merge those 2 acres with another piece of property and say that's exchange. That's not an exchange. That's creating a different lot than was initially done. So I don't have a problem with the exchange being exempt, but we need to go back and say any modification to the lot structure would fall into the 2 years. If I put 2 lots together, then I'm waiting 2 more years before I can chop them back up.
I agree with that. I can agree with that.
Well, and you have a situation where you're circumventing the intent of the
Right,
law.
but on a true exchange, if I give you 2 acres and take 2 acres, I hadn't created another lot.
Right. Nothing.
So at that point in time, I don't think it has to fall.
It's almost like you sold it. You just sold it.
Well, I just said, yeah, so I don't have an issue with that falling under the deed, but I do have an issue with putting lots back together and then not falling under. So I think that was the question, is that we're gonna address that later on, and so we wanted to be sure how we felt about the exchange situation. as long as we all understand what exchange is.
Yeah.
So you're saying it should stay?
I think the exchange should stay in the exclusion as long as we don't add an additional lot.
Or modify parcel of property?
Say I got 5 acres and you got 5.
That doesn't affect,
Can't do anything with 4.8 for 2 years?
no, those are exempt. Those are exempt, because we didn't create an addition, we moved a line. We didn't merge property. You know what I'm talking about?
Come up to the mic if you don't mind.
That mic on, Lauren?
I'm sorry, we probably should have made him come
We
to
let
the
Billy
mic
get-
too.
We
yeah.
let Billy start it. We'll blame it on Billy. He started
Yeah.
it.
What's your name and
Yeah.
address?
Cody Badroff from Mount Fair.
Okay.
So before, now Brandon.
There it is.
There it is.
You good?
Better now.
Yeah.
So in the 2 years, if they're acre or more, if you combine that lot back together, well, you still can do 7 or 9 in your 2 year span. That's how it was previously.
see-
So even if you're combining it, you're not really creating anything new on that parcel because you still can cut it up back up into 9 in that 2 year.
And so that is the definition of of cumulative. So there seems to be, I felt it meant something different, meaning that, okay, so if, let's say I've got 5 acres, or let's say I've just got an acre, and I cut it in half. Both acres are subject to both lots are subject to the 2 years. That's how I felt cumulative meant. Both lots were subject to 2 years. But putting 2 pieces of property back together is a different deal. If I've got 4 pieces of property, 2 of them are big and 2 of them are small, and only 2 of them have road access, when I put those 2 back together, I change the whole makeup of that piece of property. You understand what I'm saying? If I have an acre and I choose to cut 1 lot out of it, and then I can, through the next 2 years, as long as I don't go over the 7, I don't have an issue with that. But if I've got 2 lots that I put together because I couldn't cut them up before, then I do have a problem with not waiting 2 years. You follow what I'm saying? Like if
Yeah.
I've got an acre.
If you put them together to make it more conform, you still should be able to cut it in
Why?
7.
Because let's look at that one piece of property. Let's just talk about what we're talking about. Let's look at the property on Chandler Bluff. You had 2 small lots with road access, 2 big lots in the back that didn't have road access. Okay? So the most I could do with that was create 4 lots in the back, right? Well, I'm just, because you couldn't get to the road. The 2 big lots didn't have road access. So you had to go through the front lots. The front lots weren't big enough to be lots even with sewer, because they were so small. Okay, because it was done a long time ago. Those lots were put back together, which then allowed, if you wait 2 years, then you can cut 7 lots out of this one and 7 lots out of that one. They immediately cut 7 lots out of one, 7 lots out of the other, which could not have been done prior to. What you're talking about is if I've got an acre and I cut 1 lot out of it, or 2 acres and I cut 1 lot out of it, I could have cut 7 out of it before I cut the 1. That's a different situation. You follow what I'm saying? If I've got 2 acres of land and I cut a lot out of it, then in theory, I could cut 6 more lots out of what's left. I could have cut 7 initially, or I can cut 1 and then over the next 2 years, cut 6 more out of the big piece. But if I put land back together, if I couldn't have cut 7 out initially, then I need to have to wait.
Like in that case, instead of combining it from the beginning, You just create 7, and now you're only creating 3 lots, because you went from 4 to 7. So you're just creating 3 new.
I understand, but what we did is went from 4 to 14.
Okay, that's a big difference.
Big difference.
You said 7, so it had.
Well, I mean, I understand, but they took the little bitty lot and the big lot and merged it and made lot 1, and took the little bitty lot and the big lot and merged it and made lot 2, and cut 7 on this side and 7 on that side, which could not have been done prior to putting the lots together. So
Right.
whatever
Right,
can
I
be done
understand.
initially can be done during the 2-year period. But if it can't be done initially, it can't be done after you change the property lines.
I see what you're saying on 14. Yeah, that's a no-go. You gotta wait. Thank you.
I mean, does that make sense?
Makes sense to
I
me.
mean, if I can do it, if I can look at my piece of property and I can do it now, then if I choose to do one piece of it, then I still have the ability to continue to chop up that other part till I get to the 7 over a 2-year period. But if I can't do it now and I go change the layout, then I've got to wait 2 years before I can chop it up. I mean, I don't know how to write that, but that's what it needs to say.
Anything else? So,
This is kind of complicated to me. I still saying, but they're subdivided.
There you go.
Okay, so I think I understand. I might need a little bit more clarification. So what we're saying is if you
your mic's not on, man.
Push the button. Push the button. Oh, it's booting up.
It's booting.
it's loading up.
That's
There you
good.
go.
You're good, go.
Okay.
Now,
Appreciate that. So, so Gary, so what we're saying is if we have a piece of property and it's currently subdivided, and then I go and I combine those lots into lesser total lots, that's going to count into that 2-year cumulative time frame and not allow a future division of that property?
Okay, so if whatever you have, you own a piece of property.
Yeah.
Whatever you can legally do now, you can legally do for 2 years. So if I own 2 acres and I cut a corner out to give to my son, I still have the lion's share of that 2 acres. Over the next 2 years, I can still cut up that big piece of property, as long as I don't go past 7 and I don't go more than 4, not touching a parish right away, which is the way the current ordinance is written. However, if I've got 2 small pieces of property and I put them together to create one piece of property, then I've got to wait 2 years before I can chop that piece of property up.
Okay. Everybody
Because
agrees?
ultimately, I could not chop that one piece of property up into 7 lots
All right.
prior to doing that.
And it's written that way today. Is that?
Billy, is that right? Because I thought that once you split a piece of property, no matter how much you split it, they both had to wait 2 years before they could be split again.
It's written in a way that you can go either way. The way it's been interpreted for 10 years is as long as you don't go past what you, like some people could say if I got 10 acres and I cut out 2, I can't do nothing with the remaining 8 acres for 2 years. But the way it's been interpreted by planning is as long as you don't go over what you could do originally with that 10 acres in that 2-year period. So if you can cut out 7 1 point whatever acre lots, they would allow that. So I think that's the way it's been enforced consistently. And I kind of agree with Mr. Gary. I know what he's saying, but it's very hard to put into writing, to be able for planning to say. So I think what he's saying is whatever you can do at the beginning of the 2-year period should be able to be what you can do for that 2 years. But I don't know how to word that.
I mean, ultimately, if I look at my piece of property, whatever I can do there the first time, I might not want to survey it and chop it up into 7 lots, because I'm going to get a different assessment from the assessor and everything else. But, so I might want to just give out one piece of property. But I might have another kid in 4 months that needs a piece of property. I don't want to be stuck with one big piece. I want to be able to cut out another lot. And as long as I don't go past what was originally that could be done on my original submittal, I should be able to do that for 2 years.
So it's set, you can split a lot 7 times?
If you got 7 acres, you can do 7 1-acre
I
lots.
could do
So let me read this to you, and then I think if you're gonna work on your wording of the how you wanna put that, we might ought to just change this. It's 125-37.1. It reads, all division of property shall be cumulative and shall not be re-subdivided within a 24-month period pursuant to this article. However, it may be re-subdivided as a subdivision with improvements within this 24-month period, provided it complies with the requirements of this article. The exemption is 5 acres or more. If it's conveyed, then that starts it over. So if you read it that way, you could say, hey, if you cut 2 acres out of 10, you can't do anything with the remainder of 8, but that's not how it's been enforced. It's been as long as you don't go over what you could originally do with that 10 acres. So if we're cleaning the wording up, that might be something we can clean up too and help out the planning, make it easier.
Because I think initially that why penalize somebody for, I mean, why would I force me to make 7 lots initially when I don't necessarily want 7 lots?
Yeah, I'm good with it. I was just under the impression that once you split it, you had to wait 2 years before you can do anything with any of the rest of
Let me
it.
ask you one quick question.
How the interpretation is.
Right.
It's perfectly fine with me. I just got one more quick question. So, do you need a time frame so that all this can be recorded in the clerk of court's office so that there's not confusion on something that was maybe subdivided, stamped, and approved, not filed, and then somebody else is, they're trying to re-subdivide, and it maybe could confuse what's actually recorded and what truly was subdivided? Wasn't that the intent of the 2-year wait period, or no?
Technically, it's not subdivided until it's filed. You don't get a recorded document that's legal until it's been filed. So it doesn't matter if Sam signs it. If it's not filed and stamped at the clerk's office, that is not the legal. Am I correct on that? That's not the legal document.
And that's true. I just could see where if you were trying to, like, I don't know, maybe bring something and get it subdivided. I mean, I guess you're going to have a recorded filed copy in order to do that or something. I just didn't want that to be confusing or get the record screwed up in any way.
The original 2-year wait had to do with I bought 10 acres. And I cut 10 acres into 3.5 acre tracts. Then I immediately went behind and cut those 3.5 acre tracts into 7 tracts. And I ended up with 21 lots on 10 acres. What they're making you do is you can cut that 10 acres into 3. Then 2 years later, you can start cutting those other ones up. But you can't buy one piece of property and then cut it up and immediately come behind and cut it up again, so that you create 21 lots on a minor resub on one tract of land. I think that if
slow
you
down the
want to do that,
divisions.
then you need to go do a
Okay.
subdivision without improvements.
Yeah, okay.
So how about this? So if you merge 2 pieces of property, then depending on, if I have 5 acres and I buy 10, or I have 10 acres and I buy 5, it doesn't matter. You can only do the maximum for the biggest piece at that merger. So if I have 5 acres and I buy 10 more, then I can do whatever I can do with those 10, but I can't change it for 10 years.
You can only
for 2
do
years.
what you can do legally on
Yeah.
the initial piece of property.
But
So-
what's the initial piece? The piece you own or the piece you acquire?
Piece you own. But all 4 pieces and then start putting them back together, you gotta wait 2 years. You can't, I mean, I can, if, let's say I wanna buy 5 acres and still
Surely.
I got 10 acres, I make buy 5 and I wanna make 7 lots, that's irrelevant. But if I buy 4 and make two lots out of them, I couldn't make 14 lots initially. I mean, that's my concern.
This is all under minor resub. If you wanted to go buy a ton of lots and put them all together and then go do a subdivision with improvements, I mean, you can do all
No,
that.
This
is all
doesn't
under
apply
minor.
to subdivision with improvement.
Right.
This is only on minor resubs. And I think the issue is that you selectively put stuff back together to gain an advantage on the number of lots, which is which is exactly opposite of cutting it apart selectively and then not having to wait 2 years. Putting it back together selectively versus cutting it apart selectively accomplishes the same thing. If I take 10 acres, chop it into 3 deals, I gotta wait 2 years to maximize my lots. If I buy 4 acres or 4 lots and then put them back together to 2, I gotta wait 2 years to maximize my lots. It's the same concept in reverse.
I got you.
I don't know how to do the wording, but
Talk to Moody. Let Lauren work on it.
I think we'll let Ms. White talk to our parish engineer and come up with how to describe that, and they can maybe figure it out. But we know what we want to do, we just don't know how to word it yet. But we'll use a word like cumulative that confuses everybody and comes up with different opinions on what it is.
Anything further?
On that one.
All right.
Not taking it out of exclusions.
No, we're not taking it out of exclusions.
So that's the next page, was to clarify number 1. In the new chapter 125, we took out number 3, or it wasn't put in, any division of property where any lot within the division is less than 1 acre shall not be divided into more than 7 lots.
That's in exclusions, the one that,
Requirements for minor subdivisions.
okay.
Number 3, the little thing.
So you need to put 3 back in?
Yeah.
Okay.
The 3 that is marked out, any division of property where any lot within the division is less than 1 acre shall not have more than 4 total lots on a private, non-public road or servitude. It goes into all the servitude specifications, and I think that we just want to make it 60. Matter the length of the road.
Can we talk about that? We're
We're
just talking about it. I mean,
Hang on a second.
go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Shane.
I was just going to say, it's been like this for an extremely long period of time, at least 2 or 3 years. It's been working out pretty good. I don't really think that it's necessary to make a change here. If I could be persuaded differently if others felt that, we got a problem here. But I mean,
Well,
why do you really need to make the change?
well, Tracy's always talked about, you end up with these minor resubs, and then people later on might want to upgrade their road. With a 40-foot servitude, you're not able to do that. You
That's
need
true.
60 foot to do it.
That's true.
So let's just make them do it right off the bat with 60. That way you don't have to fight that. If that later on, they have the ability to do that if that's what they want to do. Let's take the DOT road crap out of it, because that's not something we need, but let's leave the servitude at 60 feet.
Let me ask you this one question. That's not a bad idea. I had somebody call me today. We got a problem such as that, but in my area. But to me, you got to think about everything. What if it's just 2 acres and you want to split it in half, and you want to put a 40-foot servitude in there, and it's family?
Well, but it won't be family.
It ain't gonna be family forever.
It won't be family.
If they want to cut them 2 acres into 2 more acres, legally they can do
It's
it. Then you
just-
end up with
and
it.
It's just servitude.
I could
So
see if it was over a certain amount of lots, or you need the 60. But if it's just a couple of lots,
But it's never more than, it's always starts off a certain amount of lots, and then you're talking 15, 20, 30, 50 years later, they subdivide that, and they subdivide that, and then before you know it, you got 7, 8, 10 houses on there, and they're gonna want this original, which was a driveway to start off with, to become a road. And they're gonna want drainage and utilities and all that, and we won't have the,
You see it now. You see it in your district.
if it's multiple lots, it's a problem.
Well, that's why we said we can't define what it's gonna be 10 years from now, so let's just create a 60. What's the big deal between having somebody have a 40-foot servitude and a 60-foot servitude?
It's really not. I'm just saying, if you got a piece of property that's, I don't know, 120 feet wide, 60 feet is a lot of it. If you wanted to put a servitude down the side of it,
Well, then
you're gonna.
They gonna call their councilman, they gonna come to you and say, I need a waiver, Mr. Mack, and you're gonna look at
Once
it.
you give
then.
waiver 1, then you gotta.
Well, I mean, look, I'm just telling you, Shane, you can't write ordinances perfect, but we do know that we have seen the 40-foot servitude bite us in the butt over and over and over and over again.
this is the,
All y'all good with this?
how many roads do we have that were a driveway at one time?
Yeah. I mean, I look,
And,
I'm okay.
and the people who pay their taxes and pay the road overlay, and they want it maintained as a road because by all rights it is a road, but they, whatever the council or the police jury at the time didn't do the due diligence and say, hey, I don't foresee 30 houses being on, this road, but then it somehow evolves into that, and you have no mechanism or no way to go back and go, okay, well, give me the servitude where we can put the the ditches in there and we can put the utilities in there. So you have to get ahead of it. And I agree with Mr. Talbert on that. If it's you got 2 acres and there's only 2 houses there, at some point you go, well, there's never going to be a whole bunch of houses in there, and you could grant the waiver in that respect. But if you subdivide something, if you put one house on one piece of property, that's fine. It's a driveway. At some point, when does this driveway become a road? And imagine it's some point in the future that just happens. You wake up one day and all of a sudden there's a bunch of houses there, and it's not always going to be family.
we don't need to talk about it no more. I'm good. That's
Okay.
right.
Y'all got to come on up and say what you got to say.
In the ordinance, y'all have, if it's over 1,056 feet, it has to be 60.
We're
Right.
going to eliminate the distance, make it 60 from.
That's what I'm saying. I think that's the intent of the 1,056, because if you are over that length, you're gonna have a lot of lots. You see what I'm saying? Or you could have a lot of lots in the future. Where if it's, only 300 feet, you can only put 3 lots, or 4 lots, whatever it is. Because if you start, like he said, if you're only 120, 140 foot deep lot, you have a 60-foot servitude with a 25-foot front setback on the yard, you can't even fit a house on it almost. You took up the whole yard and a 20-foot rear. So,
But if I initially do this with a 40-foot servitude and I'm only 1,000 feet, then I buy a piece of property in the back.
that's the thing. Then if you extending that servitude, then it's got to be widened.
Hey, but we've got an initial servitude initially. We see it all the time. There's no place to widen it. I guess I'm just saying devil's advocate. We have seen it so many times. We have seen it over and over and over again where you start off with the 40-foot servitude, and next thing you know, you've got stuff behind it, and there's no place to fix the initial servitude, but you can't deny people access to their property, so they're using that 40-foot servitude. Let's just make it 60 and solve the problem.
If you make it 60, I think you might have to do something with the depth of the lot. Because if you're taking away 60 plus 55 for the building setbacks, that's a lot of property, 110 and a half feet. So houses, depending on, I don't know how big, a normal house would be. Might be something we have to make sure the lots are, 16,000 instead of the people trying to do 12,000. Because it would.
Gotcha.
All right. I think there are situations where, again, you can't write a perfect ordinance. We're just trying to protect, in that regard, protect the people who give the parish the opportunity to build a proper road when the time comes. If you back up and you got 2 houses,
The
3
people
houses.
would need to build a private road. I mean, the people would need to bring it up to parish standard, and the parish could take it over.
But
That's what you're
they're incapable of bringing it to parish standard if it's only 40 feet.
Right.
So,
Right.
I mean,
So Lauren, Ms. White, are we on this red? Is this where we're at right now?
Yeah, we kind of skipped around, but
Okay,
yeah.
I was gonna say,
we're-
I'm
gonna come back to
skip
that,
around,
huh?
So let's
Yeah.
just go, okay, so what did we did? We did the
wanna-
we did the second one, right?
Yes, we just did the second one.
you would've went-
the next to last one, right? Okay, let's just go to the first one. Let's
Yeah.
you wanna just go in order from now on?
yeah, I was wondering how we skipped over that. But anyway, so wetland determinations for minor resubs.
Okay, so if y'all remember, when we talked about a definition, we talked about the EPA definition of marsh, swamp, and
Fens.
fens. So that's not a core deal. That's an EPA deal. So basically, this is not for a design standard. This is only for resub. This is only to calculate your density. Okay? So, I mean, there's an item on the agenda tomorrow for a waiver on this because the JD's not back. But ultimately, it really doesn't need a JD because the JD's not going to identify the marsh, the swamp, or the fen anyway. It's going to define what the wetlands are, but it's not going to tell you what kind they are. However, that's 30 acres we're trying to cut into two, so I'm pretty confident that it's going to meet the 2.5. That's why I put it on there for the
No, I
waiver.
think
But ultimately, what I think we need to look at is a letter from an, I don't know,
cut
environmentalist,
in
whatever,
real
that
quick.
basically says you don't have these
wanna cut
three
in real
things on your
quick.
property.
Originally, we talked about doing it exactly the way you were talking about. But I think we went back and we said that density didn't matter. And we adopted where it just basically said you can't subdivide if it's swamp, marsh, or fens. Now, to me, I mean, my thought is two things. On a minor resub, either it's exempt from that, or then we say, hey, it's a competent person can make that determination. I mean, my thought is the surveyor or planning director or anybody competent enough to be able to determine, hey, that's not a swamp, that's not marshlands, or that is marshlands. Now, if we want to go back and modify that to cover the density thing, I was okay with that too. But we need to verify that because I'm about 99% sure that we originally was going to do it that way,
No, the
but then it got changed and it has nothing to do with
The
density.
original ordinance was all wetlands counted in the density. And what we agreed is that the wetlands that were impactful were marsh and swamp. And then Randy wanted to add fens because they take hundreds of years to generate, even though we probably don't have any down here. So ultimately, if I'm gonna cut up 3 acres, then I can, according to the deal, 3 times 2.5 is
hear you,
7.5.
but I don't think
So
that's the way-
That's the way the
I want
ordinance
somebody
written.
to show me
7,
that.
we get-
It's, the second to last page?
And then we
It's
came
the last
back at a
page.
later
Because if-
date and
Last
said, you can't even mitigate
Because if that was the-
marsh, swamp.
If that
and
was the
fen.
case and you had 5 acres and you were only subdivided it in half, then it wouldn't apply at all because,
It would if 3 acres of it was, it would if, depending on how much of it was marsh or swamp.
right.
The problem is to.
So
to
Lauren, what he's
use-
saying is it's written that way because I thought we went back and changed it. And it has to be
Okay, we-
done on any, regardless of the,
We wrote
Density.
it one way, and then Mr. Moody changed the wording. So the wording is total acreage of proposed development shall not include wetlands classified as marsh, swamp, or fens according to the EPA. So
it has nothing to do with density.
Oh, yeah.
well,
Yeah.
yeah, the intent was to,
It doesn't matter that the word density is not even mentioned in that
But where's
definition.
that, which section's it in, Lauren?
it's the last page, you got it, 125 to 126.
Total acreage of proposed.
Yeah, so you can
development.
the density will only apply to the
Total
the
acreage.
property on that.
Show me where it's written,
that's
guys.
not a marsh,
Okay, go
swamp,
to
or
the
fen.
last page.
All the way
Go
at
to
the bottom of the last
page
page.
at the bottom. Total acreage of proposed development shall not include. So if you got marsh, swamp, or fen, they can't be included in the total acreage, so that does affect the density.
Guys, you're wrong. I disagree with you. It doesn't say, this basically, the way I interpret this, it says, period, total acreage of proposed development, okay, shall not include wetlands classified as marsh, swamp, or fens according to the EPA. Nowhere in here does it talk about density.
Okay,
And
okay.
in 2.5,
Well, let me ask you a question.
modified
Let me
it.
ask you a question. I've got 10 acres. I want to chop them up. Total acreage of my proposed development.
10 acres.
My 10 acres shall not include wetlands classified as marsh, swamp, or fens. How do I prove that?
Well, that's what we need to talk about.
Okay,
To
well, so,
me,
but if I have an acre of marsh, swamp, and if I have an acre of it, then my proposed development's only 9. Which
get
is
credit for
directly
that other
related to
acre.
density. That's how the ordinance started out.
go back and say that what you just said?
Okay, so I start out with 10.
10 acres total.
Then I do my evaluation, I have an acre of marsh. So my proposed development went from 10 to 9. So much
Oh,
density's based on.
the development didn't change at all. It's still 10-acre piece of property.
no,
You're
because
only
you can't
get
developing
credit
9
for
acres
that
stuff.
But I can only use what I'm developing to count the density. That's how the ordinance was passed.
I agree with you
I tell you
that we
what,
talked about
Mr.
that.
Scott
and
Lopez,
I
I
agree
can
with
guarantee
you.
that's what we said.
I
That's what it
agree
started out to talk about.
I agree that we talked about that, and I agree that maybe some people intended it to be that way. But when Randy came back and him and Moody modified it to like this, it is not written the way you're interpreting it, and it needs to be fixed. I'm telling you.
I mean,
It got nothing to do with density the way it's currently written.
well, it does, okay, you have 2 acres, and you
needs
got
to
a
be
2.5.
You need to write it in here in some way, shape, or form.
It says it right here.
Where's the word density even mentioned?
It talks about proposed.
It doesn't have to, it says it right, okay, let me explain it another way, make it simpler, I guess. So right now, you have a density of 2.5.
Does anybody
right?
agree or disagree?
You
Go
have-
ahead.
Let's see, we have a density of 2.5.
That is a requirement.
Okay, so there's your density. I have 2 acres that I want to develop, and they come and tell me one of it is a swamp. So on that development, I can put 1 house, because I can only develop 1 acre, and that 1 acre tells me. Yeah.
Tracy, that's what you're thinking. But let me go read to you exactly what this says. Jeff, just listen to it.
Okay.
Okay? Under the wetlands section, 125-126, it currently says wetland regulations prohibited and permitted uses. Okay? It just says total acreage of proposed development shall not include wetlands classified as marsh, swamp, fens, or according to the EPA. Period.
Where's the density part of
It says
Where's the density
wetlands
part of
classified as
125?
marsh, swamp, or fens defined by EPA shall not be developed or mitigated. Period.
Okay, but there,
So, but it doesn't.
But
it
if
doesn't-
you go to the density requirement, you get 2.5 acres of the total development.
It doesn't say that.
Total-
It just
go-
says
no,
2.5 lots per acre.
I understand. Yeah, but it's 2.5 per acre of the total development. I guarantee it talks about
It
that.
doesn't say in here that it. I could be wrong, but I'm telling you, we were thinking one way, and it was written that way, but then it went and gotten changed to this, and this basically says if it's swamp, fen, on the piece of property, then the property can't be
You know,
developed.
that was 2 different votes. That was 2 different votes. The mitigated develop was another vote at another time. Come on up, Billy.
How do you interpret
I'm
this,
sorry.
Billy?
No, I mean, maybe you got me wondering whether
I'm
I'm
a-
missing something, Shane. It seems
I'm
pretty
being
clear
honest.
to me.
How do you feel? I want to hear what y'all feel.
Read, what does it say?
Total 125-126, total acreage of proposed developments shall not include wetlands classified as marsh, swamp, fens, according to the EPA. So just to comment on that, just to, just say we agree or disagree to this and clear, I guess my comment is, we've turned in multiple resubs this week. We're just cutting a lot out or moving a lot line, exchange of properties. And the comment we get back from planning is you must have a delineation of wetlands per EPA requirements. So in most people's mind, they're thinking they need an environmental consultant. So what we're doing here, and I know in just talking here, I keep hearing the word proposed development, but our mindset is a minor resub. We're really drawing lines on a piece of paper, and most of our work is really exchanging raw property, and it's not being developed. I got a resub on my property just for, people cut an acre and a half out for a mortgage, or the back part of my property's got some flood zone. I didn't want to pay flood insurance. And so wetlands, should I have to go turn a $1,000 survey into a, $3,000 or $4,000 survey because I got to get wetlands? I just think you're going to be putting some hardships on some people that when it's meant for development, maybe it shouldn't be considered for a minor resub that people are just dividing land. So it's hard to delineate and differentiate between minor resubs, people doing that, and some people kind of doing it as a development. I know that, but
The easiest way to do is count all the acres for the lots, and then don't let you develop wetland. Don't let you develop swamp, marsh, and whatever. But if we're gonna count them for a subdivision, we gotta count them
40
on
acres, and you want to transfer some property, and whatever the density part wouldn't be hurt, but you'd still be causing somebody just to be able to split up 40 acres that may or may not have wetlands on it and
You
give
say
somebody
just get
20
rid of
acres.
A and leave B.
I'm fine with that.
Is that what you're saying?
I think that's what we ought to do. If the confusion is related to density, the confusion's about density. It's always been my opinion. Whatever's good for the goose, good for the gander. If density is 2.5, then density is 2.5 on everything. I don't think anybody has an issue with that. If I'm not gonna count marsh and fens and swamp on a 200 lot subdivision, I shouldn't count them on a minor resub. It's the same difference.
I agree.
So if the hardship on a minor resub is overly burdensome to have somebody write a letter that says you don't have any marsh, swamp or fens, then it's overburdensome for everybody.
Well, I think you have to do it for a subdivision anyway with improvements or without it.
Subdivision's gonna have a delineation anyway at a
Exactly.
later date, but, and it doesn't matter if it's marsh, fens or whatever, but we're just not gonna let you develop it. What I'm telling you is on the front end, on all of them, I mean, if I'm proposing a subdivision before I can submit it initially, I've gotta prove my density, which means I've gotta have a letter that says I've got no marsh, swamp, or fens, or however much of it is versus the chunk of land so I can get my density calculated. What's the difference on doing that versus you cutting a lot out to prove that you don't have any marsh, swamp, or fens in it? We don't want you to develop it. So either eliminate the wetlands and the density part and leave it in the non-development part, or everybody follows the same set of rules.
Because I really think Randy's intent was to not get credit for that wetlands when you did your density.
That's exactly what the purpose was. The purpose was not to get credit for land that was marsh.
And that's the way it was
swamp, and
originally
fens.
written, but then they went back and totally changed
Yeah,
it.
but I think we passed it, and then I think Mr. Chris thinks the legalese, this says the same thing.
So,
I think it says the same thing, but,
so Gary, what you say is if you take out A and you just say wetlands classified as marsh, swamp, or fens, how does that affect a minor resub? So,
It just means you still can't build a house on it.
but
You got
they
that
can,
type of wetlands, you can't.
okay, let me ask you this. I'm just asking. So somebody like Billy, they go and they draw out a minor resub and they go and they turn it in. Do they have to have some type of written documentation saying it's not swamp or fens?
Not if we take A out, because A's about proving you're not in the development.
Right.
If we don't care if it's in the development.
I like
then
it.
All we want is not developed, then you can take A out and leave B in, change B to A, and it continues to work.
Okay, let's take A out, if y'all are okay with that.
I'm not, but, that's up to y'all.
I think we should take A out.
Is that a motion?
Yeah.
Think about this some more.
And it's okay if you think
Here's
about
the
it.
deal.
Somebody's got a question.
And I'm just telling you, that's how you solve it. I'm just not interested in taking it out.
I like taking it out.
Scott Lobel, 18052 Louisiana Highway 444. I guess my question is, if you're an individual property owner and you hire a surveyor to do this work for you, who do you hire to do this environmental, who is the parish going to say? Because it's obviously different than what a wetland delineation that the Army Corps of Engineers require, which is obviously a requirement for the subdivisions with improvements, but it doesn't sound like this is that strict of a wetlands delineation. And we're saying, well, have somebody write a letter. Well, who writes that letter? Does the surveyor write the letter? Whose opinion? And I think that needs to be defined on what qualifications is going to be.
I agree it needs to be defined unless you take A out.
So Scott, can you can you make an application, can you do the paperwork for a delineation with the Corps?
So anything up to 5 acres, the Corps will do the delineation for you whenever you submit Go to 5 acres, they'll do
They'll
it. You
do it
don't
for
have
you.
to hire
And then,
somebody else.
and then to get more than 5 acres, who do you, I mean, I know some of these,
But that's, it probably ought to be with.
Ecos can do it if it's more than 5 acres.
well, I know, but over 5 acres, like, you know, some of these guys, I mean, we used a guy out of Eunice before, somewhere over there, Arlen, whatever, I think he's retired now. I mean, that's what he did. He was I guess a geologist. I don't know, what made him qualified to do that?
I have no idea. I guess those guys that do it with wetlands backgrounds, they get a forestry degree or whatever. I mean, there's I guess a qualification that they have to get. So I guess it's but to me, that's a requirement of getting a wetland delineation for our Army Corps engineers. Are we holding these individual property owners to that same standard just for a substandard type of wetlands regulation? Because I agree with Billy. I think that puts a hardship on individual property owners who are not developers. And the other comment that I have too is, like, for me, and I'm not a wetlands guy, so I don't know, but we talk about swamps, fens, and marshes. In my opinion is, I don't know if Livingston Parish has fens or even marshes. We have swamps, but I don't.
We probably don't have any fins in the whole state.
But we are a coastal
you know,
parish,
I
so
think we have
coastal
marshes
parishes have marshes,
up here.
don't they?
I'm like you, I'm not a expert on that either, but I certainly think, I mean, maybe what I call a marsh is probably a swamp. I don't know.
I do think that the attachment to
Maybe some on the side of Lake Marpole, but I think we probably wouldn't get in the marsh till we got closer to Pontchartrain.
I would assume whatever you would call a marsh, even if it wasn't, it would for certain be a swamp,
Marsh is just grass.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to me, I guess the attachment to the minor resubs is, I think it presents the potential to where you're at the subjection of somebody who's going to come out and say that this is a swamp, and then we're going to prevent people who are going to divide a lot that they may want to build a camp on along these rivers or something like that. They can't do it. They can't divide their property because it's going to be a swamp. Like, just take, for instance, in our area, all of this stuff along LA Trace. Does this mean that these lots can't be effectively
We specifically
divided
left the
anymore?
riverines out on the EPA definition because of that. I mean, that's a different, what's along the river is different. It's not a marsh, it's a riverine, and we left those specifically out of the EPA definition so that property was still developable.
Because I know Shane has brought it up in previous meetings about not wanting to hurt people on those river communities. They just want to make sure that protection for those property owners are there.
And it is. But ultimately, if you want the development to stop in these areas where water flows, you have to stop letting it happen. And whether it happens in a minor resub or in a subdivision with improvements, it happens. So at some point we have to draw a line and go, we can't do this anymore. So, I mean, I don't, as far as who goes in my opinion, determines that, I'm sure there's some engineering firm out there that can go out there and make that determination, and we would take their standard on that. I mean, it's.
But I guess is that it's not a written requirement of the parish, so I mean, could you get anybody to write the letter that basically says, well, no, there ain't any swamps on my property?
I think it needs to be clarified so that the planning department will accept whatever's done. Right now, they're not sure what to accept to determine it. So, I don't know. I mean, if we take out A, you still might have to determine. I mean, it says B says wetlands classified as marsh, swamp, or fens defined by the EPA shall not be developed or mitigated.
But
Do you still have to
I mean,
define who determines if it's wetlands and if you can build a house on it or
Certainly
not?
would. You'd still have to have something, now the question is, if I understand Mr. Lobel correctly, we need to clarify what person has the knowledge and
Right.
capability to go to make that determination.
And if
I
you're
know
gonna
that
say,
there-
and
there've
if you're
been
gonna
some-
say that it's a certified wetlands person that does that, then like Billy was saying, that's a hardship that you're putting
Yeah.
on an individual property
Yeah.
owner. And the question becomes, well, if it broadly needs to be applied between minor subdivisions, subdivisions with and without improvements, then why do we even have a minor subdivision ordinance at all? If you're gonna require everybody, if that's gonna be a blanket deal across the board, that all of these ordinances apply to minor resubs, which is never our focus whenever a lot of this stuff got talked about in the very beginning, and it seems that recently parish administration is looking like they pointing to the citizens down in our area for like, this is what we asked for, and that's not what we asked for. And I said parish administration, not legislation, okay? I was made aware of some stuff at chamber meeting today, but anyway, why even have a minor subdivision designation at all if all of these things are gonna apply across the board? That doesn't make sense to me. Every subdivision with an improvement at this point, because we're picking and choosing what applies to a minor resub. Whenever you touch a parish highway, you gotta get wider. But we don't make them do any drainage improvements. Subdivisions with improvements gotta do drainage improvements, so it's not real consistent. And the minor resubs were there to protect individual citizens that they don't have to go through all of those things. There's an easier mechanism to divide their property for other reasons of just, personal gain and development and wanting to sell those lots for profit, kind of like what Billy was mentioning, so.
You also have to recognize too that it's a give and take. If you allow something to happen at any level where you don't have to do that, collectively, it adds to the problems that we're all trying to solve here. Drainage, traffic. I agree. At times I've thought, why do we have this at all, too, myself? But, you have to, I guess as a governing body, you have to go, where do we draw the line?
For minor resubs, why aren't they required to do perimeter ditching? And by no way do I want to impose that on individual people, but like we're picking and choosing. If you touch a parish roadway, you got to bring it up to standards, which may mean that's going to be a hell of a cost to an individual. It's going to be more.
We're going to talk about
wetlands
that.
Regulation that has to do something.
Yeah, I don't think we can do that. We got to talk about that.
fix
We'll
that.
fix that. I don't know. This is good conversation. I think it's important decisions being made here. Do y'all agree or do y'all disagree that this requirement should just be totally exempt from minor resubs?
Here's the deal. I think that the swamp, the marsh, and the fen was a compromise on wetlands with respect to density. And I'm not willing, a month after we did this thing, to say, okay, it's not working right, so we're just gonna renege on our compromise. I'm just not willing to do that.
Okay,
We compromised and said, marsh, swamp, and fens are significant. Therefore, we don't want them developed, and we're not gonna count on them toward density. So I'm not willing to just punt on that right off the bat, because I think we lose credibility in trying to work as a team to figure that part out.
Okay.
So I think that it is important for us to do some research and figure out, at a minimum, what are we looking for? Are we looking from a letter from a geologist? Are we looking for a letter from an environmentalist? Are we looking from a letter from a forestry guy? Who can say, in theory, you ought to be able to walk out on a piece of property. I know you can't go out and do a wetlands determination by walking on, but you ought to be able to, you can read the definition that the EPA has as a marsh and a swamp and be able to walk out on a piece of property and figure that out.
Okay.
And at least look at a map, because a swamp has to be underwater a certain period of time of the year, and there's some specific definitions that the EPA handbook has
Okay.
with respect to
So-
those. So I think we need to, at a minimum, figure out what the minimum requirements are and just.
And who can perform that work? Now, let me ask you this. That being said, that's going to take a little bit of time, right, to figure all that out. We're holding up these subdivisions, okay? So my thought is, let's go ahead and put something in here tonight, maybe like, okay, we're going to allow the surveying company that subdivides this property maybe designate them until we go and figure that out, what you're saying, Gary, and then we'll come back and we'll modify it if needed. But for right now,
Shouldn't
The-
it be our person doing that?
That's what I was gonna say. If
What
I
was
was
you
gonna
gonna say?
do it, I
What
would
did you
say the
say?
parish needs
Somebody
to.
from the parish. So once they have it determined as wetlands, then we got somebody that goes out and says, hey, this is a swamp.
say that again? Now,
yeah, but-
I heard
but-
what you
but
said
ul-
about the
okay,
plan,
but
the
Jeff-
planning director or somebody.
Ultimately, I don't need a wetlands determination to subdivide a
right.
piece of property.
Right.
I need it to develop it. I don't need it to subdivide it.
Correct.
So I think what's important is that I could have a wetlands guy probably go out and walk my piece of property and say there's no marsh or swamp or whatever. I don't know what that would cost. It would be
No cost.
it would be substantially cheaper than running a delineation. Ultimately, I think the guy's he's gonna go to LSU and pull maps just like he would if he was doing a delineation, and then he's gonna go physically walk the property like he was doing a delineation. But I don't think he's gonna have to spend the time doing the study that he would on delineation. I think he could basically go pull the maps on your property and look at the historic situation on the maps, and then go look, walk the property and figure out what's on there without having to take soil samples and vegetation samples to determine.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this.
I don't know what that
Since,
costs,
since
but I
you,
mean-
since we talked about maybe leaving A in, y'all wasn't quite comfortable to go make such a major modification. Okay. My thought is if we allow, and we write in here and allow this surveyor to look at our definition, of the swamp, fen, and marsh, they are to be able to determine if their division of property that they're subdividing meets that requirement. And if it does, and then they could, mark it up on the map or something and show where the 2.5 density requirements are being met with the rest of the property. I mean, to me, that almost should be the person doing this because, say for instance, you get this other guy and he goes and he says, okay, well, yep, got marsh on it. Well, then how much? Well, I don't know. I didn't survey it. To me, that surveyor is going to know exactly how much acreage, he can go out there and say, oh, there's none. Well, then he don't even have to fool with it. But if he goes out there and says, oh, well, now we do have some swamp on this, then he's going to need to go out there and maybe do a little extra surveying, figure out exactly how much swamp, and then he's going to need to make sure that it meets the density requirement. He almost seems like he ought to be the guy doing this. I'm not selling it. I don't
need
even.
an engineering company that offers this.
I'd like to hear their feedback, but to me, whatever we do tonight and tomorrow night, look, we got to do something to prevent these subdivisions from being held up any longer. A move's got, yeah, we got to make a move ASAP.
Yeah, so obviously, I know we are talking about who can do it and how to define that, but I know, Mr. Tracy, you mentioned where do you draw the line, and we're really talking, the main purpose of this is for density. Could we just put an exemption for minor resubs if you're doing 4 lots or less? You're not doing a development, you're just dividing up property, and y'all have had some other areas in here where 4 is the threshold in that part. So if it's 4 lots or less, or a piece of property greater than 5 acres, may be exempt from that. And then when you're looking at a bigger piece of property, the density is really not a problem for a minor resub anyway. That might just be a couple of things that could not put a hardship on individuals and keep things moving, but still, meet what y'all's goals are as far as not developing that type of property.
Or we could exempt it until we do define it.
Well, go ahead.
I was about to say, I guess Billy and I have been talking to the same people, because a lot of feedback that I got was that minor subdivisions should just be 4 lots or less, and then they'd be exempt from everything.
Let's change it.
That ain't really what, I don't think he said that.
4 lots or less,
Oh,
and then let's.
That ain't what he said.
Let's make it exempt.
He was talking about the wetlands
I understand,
exclusions,
but
but other feedback had been 4 lots or less, but that was just, wanted to throw that out there.
That ain't what he was
Let's
saying.
change the minor resub to 4 lots and let's make them all exempt.
That's a conversation for another day.
That's the conversation for today. If we want to exempt minor subs, let's change them to 4 lots and then exempt them.
We got to put that on the agenda.
5 lots of
We got to
subdivision with
get,
improvements.
Or you can wait 2 years.
Or you wait 2 years and cut it back up.
Yeah.
Look, we.
Gotta tell us something. Gotta tell us something. Come on,
Look,
get it.
Didn't say it in public.
Get it. Well,
Yeah.
Okay,
I mean,
I tell you what, I'm all in favor of initially changing A to
I'm
say,
worried about A coming out and it defeats the whole purpose that
We can
what
leave it
Randy
in.
was
We
trying
just
to
gotta-
do.
I understand, but on minor resubs, we're gonna say if you're 4 or less, you're exempt from A. And if, I mean, if you're 4 or less, you're exempt from A. I'm not willing to say because you're over 5, you're exempt, because, I mean, how many times are you cutting 5 up? You know what I'm talking about? I mean, if you're
doing 5, you're trying to make money you can pay to get
5
somebody.
acres, 5 acres. If you are 4 lots or less, then you're exempt from A. Right now, till we figure out how to define who does it.
Yeah.
Go with that.
Okay, me too.
me too.
So in the wetlands section, I'm gonna add C, and it's gonna say exclusion, minor subdivisions with 4 lots or less.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Help you out? Any further discussion?
Does that solve the problem?
For now?
I mean, I don't know
Now?
if it solves every problem.
Temporarily? Look, come on.
It solves a lot of problems. I don't know if it solves all of them.
Look, he got to tell us we need to be bigger than 4.
A question, because I had to submit one for 6 lots. So,
You better go get your delineation, or actually, those guys will write it. They're just gonna do some field work. I mean, they're gonna, I mean,
right,
I mean,
the letter thing, so like if it's 5 or 6 lots,
letter.
y'all are good with a letter. So
Letter.
we definitely need to put that in there. And then, as a surveyor, I don't feel comfortable
I didn't figure you did.
You don't like,
shooting the wetlands or tell you this is the edge of the swamp. I don't know, it could be 15 feet over there. And then-
So here's the deal. It needs to be a wetland consultant, and they will do it for less money than delineation. They're gonna require some field work, but ultimately, they will do it for less than what a delineation would cost. And as an individual, so it's only preliminary. It's the preliminary part. Ultimately, if you chop it up and you're gonna go build something, you need a delineation anyway. I mean, they say that the EPA doesn't care if an individual builds in the wetlands, but as long as you don't get reported. But if you get reported, they gotta come check you out, and then they're gonna care that you built in the wetlands, so.
My other question, it says, the wetlands is for development. What classifies as development for a minor resub? If you're putting the land up, you're not building any houses on it.
correct. So that's why he's saying, that's basically
I'm just
why he
saying
made the
that
modification he
It's only
did.
for density. The letter you're getting is for density. The letter you're getting is saying that I've got 5 acres and I don't have any marsh on it, or I've got an acre of marsh. I don't even care where the acre of marsh is. We're gonna take the acre out of the 5, and you're gonna get your density based on 2.5 times 4.
So we gotta not only get a letter, but we also have to show if there is wetlands, how much the acreage is, and then y'all.
How much acreage, because when Randy's intent of this thing was to take wetlands out of the density count. And then we added not developing those wetlands at a later date. So ultimately, you can't mitigate marsh, swamp, or fens.
I actually saw an email from a consultant that just said this piece of property does not have marsh, swamp.
I mean, that's what you need. If you don't have it,
Say that one more time, Lauren.
I saw the email from a consultant that said this property has no marsh, swamp, or fens, and it, had his signature on the bottom and.
because ultimately, if you're,
To me, that should be,
that's,
Give that to
what you
Scott,
need.
and he'll have his answer right there.
ultimately a wetland consultant, environmentalist. I mean, a
Okay, so
lot
we're
of
gonna-
people can make that
we're gonna make the
determination for
motion
you.
to add C and modify this and introduce it tomorrow night.
Well, so we're just going through, yes, C is gonna be added.
All right, so we've done the wetland determination to 4 lots or less. In minor subdivisions, we're changing the word submittal to application, just so there's no confusion, because minor resubs do not go through a submittal process.
Right, okay.
So we're doing that. Planning only needs 1 copy, that's clerical. If the minor sub has concerns, do they send it to the planning commission or the parish council? So it's written in here that if Mr. Sam, the Sand
gotcha.
has any drainage stuff, they send it to, the parish council.
The minor sub has concerns.
If he has any concerns about the drainage.
I think we should,
Or, no, it says the planning director
do you
may send the minor resub to the planning and zoning commission and the parish council if needed.
We'll take the parish council out because we're not in it anymore. the Planning and Zoning Commission does it. As the ordinance is written right now, we're not
Okay,
involved.
I just want to make sure.
But
I'm not
I
saying
think-
it won't be changed,
let's
but right
just-
now, we're not in the deal.
let's just talk through it. Currently, the way the ordinance is written does not require a minor resub to go to the planning commission. Period. Okay? So,
Go ahead, finish what you're saying.
well, no, I mean, my thought is if you're gonna say, well, if I got concerns, well, it's gotta go. Whoa, 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 whoa. That ain't the way it's written. We're gonna define concern here. I mean, to me, if we wanna say, okay, gotta have a gravity drainage study for any minor resub over so many lots, period, make it black and white, well then, okay, maybe we talk about that. But I mean, what's a concern? Just because you wanted to? We gotta,
I always,
to me,
for some reason, I
minor
always thought
resubs
it-
don't go to planning, period. The planning director needs to contact the council. If you need a gravity drainage study, do one. I mean, what are we talking about here?
So we got a 10, is the 10 days still in there right now? Okay, we need to change 10 to 30.
Wait, no, 10 changed to 20.
It's 20 now? It's 20, so 10 went to 20 under when we fixed 125?
Yes.
Okay, so Shane, do you think it needs to come to the council, or, I mean, look.
What are you talking about, buddy? What are you talking
Okay,
about?
He's saying define a concern. I always thought it was a drainage concern. If the planning director had a drainage concern over a minor subdivision,
What I think we should do is ignore that one altogether until we get a definition of what a concern is.
Exactly. To me,
Yeah.
if it's,
So you just wanna keep
we
it in
put
there?
something
Yeah, we'll
in
keep
there.
it
if
in
it's-
and we'll ask
if it's-
them, what do you
if
mean by concern?
Exactly. What are you talking about here?
Go ahead.
I just want to give you a quick example. I had multiple jobs like this where I have two identical jobs, splitting up 5 acres into 3 lots or whatever it was, and these people don't have neighbors that they got jobs and they're not worried about everybody else's business. These people, they're really concerned about everything, so they call planning. Well, the exact same thing happened on the property, but because these people called with concerns, this job might have cost $1,000. This might end up costing $10,000 because you got to go topo the property, topo upstream, downstream, do a drainage impact study. So it would be nice if it was defined what the exact concern was and who was making it.
But Billy, isn't the purpose of putting up a sign to notify your neighbors? If you're going over, was it 4 lots or more, you gotta put a sign up?
Well, now it says one. That's what I got a whole list of things. But
Yeah,
right
that
now,
needs to be
they're telling us
changed,
if
too.
we wanna
Well,
take-
that's further down the list here. So,
Okay.
But anyway, go ahead.
So, I mean, the purpose of putting up a sign is to notify people. And if the people don't care, then there are no concerns. But if the people care, then there are concerns. And they need to have a place to voice their concerns. So in theory, we could send every minor resub to the planning commission. But what we've done is chosen to put signs up, and if people have concerns, then they go. And if they don't have concerns and there's no input to the public, then we let it rock and roll. So, I mean,
I know it's tough for everybody. Just
I mean,
because somebody makes a
somebody-
call, is that a concern? Or if they have data, is that should they provide some
I
data?
mean, ultimately, it really goes back to, if your neighbors have some issues, that's,
I don't like it like that.
we're still on,
but right now, I think
Let's just leave it alone. Okay.
we're gonna let it
So we're
go.
just gonna punt that
Okay.
until they tell me what concern means, you know?
Okay, last one in that minor subdivision is the sign. It's just gonna say the sign shall be erected at least 10 days prior to the submission of the application to the planning department.
We didn't define the number of lots on this one, is that the problem?
No, that's further down. This is
Okay.
just clarifying that, when it needs to be up. Okay, the next is
Yeah.
sign requirements for exchange surveys and combination of lots. So those little projects that Billy are talking about, right now, we wrote it that they have to follow the requirements of a minor subdivision. So they have to put up a sign. It's all I have to say is they have to follow 1 through 7 instead of 1 through 8, if y'all don't want them to put up a sign.
Okay, so wait a second, but requirements for combination lots and exchange surveys, how many lots are we talking about? Okay, so exchange surveys would be would be moving a line. Combination of lots is what?
I got lot 37 and 38, and I want to combine.
So we're gonna exempt the signs on those?
I think so.
Yeah, yeah, we did, it is 4.
Okay, so on 38 and 39, we're gonna go 1 through 7 instead of 1 through 8?
Yeah, so
Okay.
no signs will be
Okay,
required.
all right.
Okay, next, servitudes and rights of way, 125-80.
We'll leave it 60.
We're gonna strike all of that and just make servitude 60.
60.
All the way across the board.
60 across the board.
Okay? Next page is just reference.
Right away.
Okay,
Minor resubs, we don't care, we have no road requirements, we will have a servitude requirement, period. Am I right? Oh, you're
Correct.
talking about 125-81.
Yeah.
yeah, well, okay, 125-81 is where we put the width requirement,
Yes.
but it's only to parish and state roads and highways. So, what was the question there?
The question is, do you want width to apply to all developments like minor resubs or just subdivisions? And we don't require a road in a minor resub, we require servitude.
Correct.
So it should not apply to minor servitude, minor
Minor
resubs.
resubs.
Okay, because we're not making them go to
Not making them do the road.
Okay, okay, cool.
And so whatever, I don't know, do you have
Billy,
to?
was there
do you-
some language that confused that?
Well, basically, planning was saying through 81 apply to minor resub. And it doesn't,
You don't?
that's fine. 'Cause what they were saying, if I cut out 2 acres in the back, if I got 10 acres, I cut out 2 in the back, I gotta build a road all the way. Right now, when you're just moving lines or you're adding servitude, you don't
Yeah,
Correct,
get to pay for taxes.
I agree with that.
correct. So on 125-80 and, or let's see. The streets.
So we got that fixed.
125-76 through 125-81, I'm just gonna add a blurb in there that is exempt, minor resubs are exempt from that, because that's the street.
On the road width.
The servitude will be in the minor resub section.
Okay, so as long as the servitude stays at 60, we're exempted on the road stuff.
Yeah, so that'll be,
125-80, number. DOT, so we might need to take that.
Okay.
Saying you gotta build a road to DOT standards because.
See that?
7, which is the requirements for minor subdivisions.
Okay, so now, that was type of, that's what they.
Bless you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so
Okay, so we're good on the road, that road thing is good.
have we addressed all your concerns, basically?
What's the other one? You gotta come up and talk. They really like it when you do it.
So just for a clarification, if we do 1 lot into 2,
You're doing,
No,
Dana, you're doing 2 lots,
well,
so you're under 4.
So can we talk about that? So, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Dana, say your name.
If it's 4 lots or less, to me, no sign.
right, that's how planning
Period.
operates now. It's just not clear in the, so,
Yeah, 4 lots or less, no sign.
4 lots or less.
Dana Rushing, 34875 Molly Drive, Denham Springs. So the question is, I'm going 2 lots in, or 1 lot into 2, no sign? It doesn't matter. I was
No,
going
no sign, no
driveway
wetlands
improvements.
thing. So you still
Okay.
gotta do your JD, because you're gonna need it at a later date. You just don't need that letter. That's why I put you on for the waiver, because we knew we were gonna fix that part, and you're doing 2 lots on 30-something acres. I knew you did.
25 acres.
25 acres, so I knew you were good there, and we knew we were gonna take the road out. That's why you were put on there for the waiver tomorrow.
Okay, so I don't
So
need a
we've
waiver.
addressed both those concerns.
Okay, good.
I did a good job.
Okay, so I want to make a motion to approve all the changes that we talked about tonight. You got them written down, right, Lauren?
Got it all.
Do we need to, okay, we're talking about the definition of a boulevard,
I got it,
the submittal,
yeah.
the digital copy, the change of submittal application, the 60-foot servitude, the wetlands determination exemption on 4 lots or less,
I have trouble.
the sign requirement on 10 days, putting lot 7 back in number 3.
The only thing that I want to add to that conversation is, we are going to add the 4 lots or less, so I don't have that. but it's gonna be added to,
It'll be section C. It's gonna be number C on the last section, which is wetlands determination, right?
No, I'm talking about the sign requirements.
Oh, okay.
For minor subdivisions.
Okay.
125-37.
Yeah. Well, and that'll be number 9, because we're adding back in the 9. So yeah, that number 9 is gonna have an exclusion for 4 lots or less.
Okay.
except for number 3.
Wait. Currently, you gotta put a sign up on 4, don't you? 4 more.
So four,
Three or less.
So
Three or
four
less. 3 or less on the sign, 4 or less on the determination.
Okay, that's gonna confuse them.
needs to be.
Well, they're gonna have to read what the ordinance
I
says.
guess,
Wait, I wasn't paying attention. I thought we were done. So, Lauren, I
Make
agree
both
with
of
you.
them 4 more?
4 lots or less, no sign. 4 lots or less, what did we say on the wetlands? No
so
wetlands.
4 or less.
4 or
On
less,
the wetlands,
no
but-
wetlands.
Okay, we have currently been 4 or more on the sign.
Okay,
Leave it like I said, 4 lots,
Wetlands and 4 lots or more on the sign.
4 lots or more, you need a sign.
We're doing 4 or,
Currently says.
okay,
okay,
yeah,
4 or.
no problem.
Because
Got it.
otherwise, we're gonna go to 4 or
So
more
you
on the
got it?
wetlands, and I don't think anybody wants to do that. I think they wanna leave it at 4 and not move it to 3. So we're gonna leave the wetlands at 4, and 4 or less.
4 and 4. Got it.
One's 4 or less.
Who
I'll
made
make that motion.
Okay, I second it.
Tracy, now you wanna call for the vote, or you wanna?
Yeah, I call for the vote.
Okay, Mr. Girlinghouse, Mr. Ard, Mr.
Yes.
Talbert,
Yes.
Mr. Mack.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
You're on the agenda tomorrow night for introduction.
Then it goes to 2 more weeks.
2 more weeks. So, but ultimately.
Probably can talk them into going ahead and-
Probably, we could probably,
I'll send them
we're
my
gonna see, we're
notes.
gonna see if we can do a universal waiver tomorrow night.
A universal waiver. Oh, my Lord.
Ultimately, we're gonna hold that body up 2 weeks.
Yeah, we don't
on
wanna do
stuff
that.
that we're already, I don't know, we'll figure out what we can and can't do.
How long does it take for the ordinance? That's all I'm trying to ask.
I'll make it effective immediately.
We'll make it effective
upon
immediately.
adoption.
The ordinance change will be effective upon the parish president's signature. So he'll sign it that following Monday. Are we good? So we'll introduce it Thursday night. 2 weeks later, we'll do it. He'll sign it Monday. They'll be effective Monday. Okay.
It was a good meeting.
No, we got emergency provision, for utility work.
Huh?
You're the co-chair.
Tracy left?
When we talk about this, he's back. He just was. Okay, so we approved the motion on the old business. Now we need to do emergency provision for utility work.
We on, new business.
I really don't know what we're trying to do here.
Okay, my bad. Sorry, guys. All right, so this is the emergency that I've been getting phone calls about. So me and you talked about this at some point today.
Okay, so
You want to like eliminate
utility
the utility poles.
poles should be exempt, and connections from residential homes should be exempt, because technically,
they're in the right of way.
if I start hooking up somebody's underground at their home, I'm starting in the right of way, which would require a permit, which is overly burdensome, which was not the intent. The intent was mainly for construction. And then there is a provision for emergency stuff in the ordinance, and we need to amend the handbook. We need to amend the handbook to add that section, Lauren, in the back. So this is actually 2 different deals. So if y'all go to page 26 of the handbook, go to page 27. Do we need to add that in red, or is that already in the handbook?
It's in our ordinance. It doesn't need to be in the booklet.
Well, if you read our ordinance, it refers to emergency of the utilities and other ground disturbing breaking activities of the handbook. So I'm just wondering, do we need to put that in the handbook? Do we need to amend the handbook to add section 1 and section 2 of the emergency utility underground disturbing breaking activities?
Yeah.
No, the ordinance. The ordinance references it, but it's 2 different sections in it.
Okay, is this in the emergency handbook now? Oh, the red part is in the handbook?
Yes.
Okay, so all we need to do is under A is eliminate poles, or we need to add something to exempt poles and add hookups of residential homes. Residences
Are you talking about in our ordinance or the booklet?
in our ordinance.
Where does it talk about that?
I'm just gonna add a section that says exemptions, utility poles and tie-ins to residential housing.
Okay, that's good.
I agree, that's fine. Yep.
The booklet is just fiction.
Okay, I'll make the motion
To put you on the spot on that too, if you find it, like, if you dig in and find it later, you can put it on the spot, or you can do it however you want to do that, Lauren. You know?
Yeah, I scanned through it and didn't see it, so I
The
don't
motion,
think it's in there.
so we're gonna do a motion to add poles, an exemption for poles in,
Utility poles and
Residential
tie-ins. to
Any discussion
residential
from the
housing.
audience? I need a motion.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Mack, second by Mr. Ard. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. So did we do a motion in second for like
Yeah.
everything else?
we did that on everything else.
All right. So B, District 9 zoning map. What you want to discuss about your zoning map?
Oh, thanks. I forgot about that. Okay, so, talking about zoning Livingston Parish, right? And
Talking about District 9 zoning map.
correct. And Council District 9 zoning map is complete, and I want to introduce that map tomorrow night. I'd like to have a 60-day grace period and have it actually adopted 60 days from tomorrow night, or I guess maybe whatever's equivalent to approximately 60 days, ever how many Thursdays after that, approximately 60 days after that.
Wait a second, have you had any public hearings on it yet?
Well, it's not required. A public hearing is not required.
I'm not talking
And
about, I'm not talking about.
my plan is to, I want it to be out there. I want people to have the visibility to see how their property is zoned, and then have the ability to reach back out to me, and we can talk about it. And it can be amended before it's adopted, but once it's adopted, it's time. It's time to have Council District 9 zoned. I do know that we could have public hearings and we could go on and we could make this last 9 months to 12 months, and a year and a half from now we're still talking about zoning Council District 9. I think it's time to go ahead and make the move.
Look, I don't disagree with that per se, but I think, personally, I think you just have your public hearing and then introduce it. But you want to introduce it, then put yourself on a hard timeline, and then,
The only thing I'm gonna point out, the only thing I'm, excuse me.
What's the difference?
The only thing I'm gonna point out, if you introduce that map.
If I introduce that map.
Every change is an amendment.
Well, okay, so let's talk about that. You're right, but it's not, we're not changing text. We're changing a map. So whenever we go to amend it, we would just simply adopt the amended map. You see what I'm saying? And to amend the new map, all we're doing is clicking on parcels and changing classifications. So it's not like you're gonna have this parcel.
You can do it however you want to, brother. It's your district.
Right.
But if it were me, I would have your public meetings, have your input, get it, let's say 75% or 80% there, and then pass it.
Y'all gotta elaborate on that.
Okay, here's the deal.
That way
Here's the deal.
You minimize the adjustments to it.
I feel very confident. I'm 99.9% good to go. I introduce this. People will take a look at this. They know this is coming. If me and the people of Council District 9 decide that we need to prolong this, we'll prolong this.
So you want a 60, you
We'll
want a
take it
60
off.
day hearing date?
Yeah, I want a 60-day hearing date.
October 13th. If you
October the
introduce it
13th.
tomorrow.
That would be the day we adopt it. And look, I've been wrong before. When I'm wrong, I admit it. We make a change to fix it. Okay?
All right.
I'm ready to
Make the
do
motion
this.
for introduction?
Come
I
on
want to
up.
make a motion to introduce this.
Got public input on this.
Yeah, Herb Gomez, Greater Baton Rouge Association of Realtors, 14101 Perkins Road, Baton Rouge, representing the realtors in the Livingston area, which number about 500 and something now. And we have some concerns about introducing and getting started toward the approval process without having a lot of people with the ability to see what you're going to zone it to. We've been working with the staff here to try to get electronic maps, to get a link to the electronic maps so that people can go look at the map. We'd send out emails to all the realtors in town. They'd pass it on to their clients and customers. Say, okay, you can point at the map. That's what your property is now. Here's what it's going to be. Can't do that now. I don't think you want 1,000 of them to show up at the library or wherever you hold a meeting, and they won't show up. So they'll just know something's happened. We would like to have the ability to defer this long enough to have the ability to get the electronic version of the map. We will email every realtor in Greater Baton Rouge area, put it on our MLS site, so they will be able to look at the map, District 9, whatever district's available, and say, okay, that's the property I own. I want to see what it's going to be rezoned to.
So Herb, are you looking for a PDF or are you looking for an interactive map? Just a
Interactive
PDF?
would be perfect. PDF will do.
I do believe that
We're gonna be able to get a
whatever we
peek.
do, I plan on having public hearings, and that is going to be part of it when you come. Will it be available online?
If the
Go
council,
ahead.
I have a question about the online thing. Okay, so y'all are working with Alvin Fairburn?
AFS.
And they have it electronically, correct?
Correct.
And they're changing it. So I think tomorrow I need to call the assessor's office to see if that data can be put on the GIS.
And supposedly that is
can.
what
That's what they were
we're
working
doing.
Okay, so have they figured out if they can or not?
Last time I heard that, yes.
They
But I mean,
can, they
yeah,
just
but I don't
haven't
know,
yet.
have it.
okay, so, but my question is, in theory, if we have 9 electronic maps that are working maps of progress, we could put them on our website that people could link to them right now.
We could put them on the assessor's website.
Why can't we put a PDF on our website?
I mean, I guess we could, yeah, that wouldn't be a problem.
And then the PDF, I mean, and then as changes are made, the PDF could be modified. I mean, you just switch one PDF out for another.
This is why I'm going to have look, I'm in a weird position where probably a third of my district's already zoned, but I understand that there's going to be areas outside. And another way it's worse for me because when you have a zoned piece of land, then you have expectations to the property that's right around it, So I have a different problem than, let's say, Mr. Mack has to some degree. I'm going to have my public hearings, and then even if you pass it after your public hearings, you can still adjust it. We're gonna adjust it. Obviously, we're gonna have to adjust it along the way for a period of at least a year.
Oh, yeah.
But as far as like it being in a PDF form to where they can look at it online, I mean, I just don't know. I think they will. You can look at it, but then you type in your address. If you can see your address, I just haven't gotten that answer from them yet. Or I know that's their idea, that's their plan. Is it engaged right now? I don't know. I can find out though.
I think the plan, let me know if you feel this is acceptable, is to put a PDF, like a picture of the zoned area. We can try to put that on some type of website.
I think anything.
PDF,
Anything
okay?
that would get information to them as to what the buyers.
To be able
or
to click
buyer
on it,
customers-
to be able to click on it and an address pop up
That'd be
and tell
perfect.
you what it is,
That'd be
I
perfect.
don't think that exists today.
But, we may not be able to get perfection, but if we get a good PDF that's got what that delineates the property and what the zoning is you plan for that property, or what the consultant planned for that
I
property.
think what'll have to happen is you're gonna get a real good general idea from the PDF that's on the website, and then if it's any type of discrepancy, then you're gonna need to go seek further clarification on exactly what the zoning classification is.
You can call the councilman, you can call the office.
Right.
Y'all want Ms. White to reach out to AFA tomorrow, and if they've got electronic maps, just get them emailed over here, PDFs.
That's
Why don't we
perfectly
put-
fine.
why don't we
I
put
was
the
gonna go
zoning
by
maps
there.
on the website, and we'll create an email address like zoning@lpcgov.com to where if anybody has problems, they can just email it and we can disperse it to our council.
And just
Yeah.
send me links to whatever, and we will distribute that to our 500 or so members, and they'll distribute it to their clients and customers, and You'll
still
get
wanna-
feedback.
You want to introduce yours tomorrow? Okay, you got a motion, you made a motion?
Yeah.
I'll
make a
second
motion.
it.
Okay,
Motion.
thank you. Very, very
We'll
much
see if we
appreciate
can
that.
get that handled for you there. Motion by Mr. Mack, second Ms. Talbot.
Yeah, and it's an introduction. If we see that this is not what's best for the people,
All in favor?
we defer. Appreciate y'all. Aye.
All right. We got anything else? Other business?
I move to adjourn.
Sure.
Thanks for, let me just speak real quick. I know we had the 125 discussion, but 126 and 127 is commercial multifamily. I've had a lot of people in the parish reach out, and this guy gave me permission to use his name, John Blunt, and people that build stuff like him. The way the ordinance is written right now, for the subdivisions, we go to planning with a preliminary tentative, approval, then do our studies, then go back to the planning commission. The way it's written for those two things, you don't have the opportunity for the tentative approval, and there's a lot of concerns about that and a lot of things that could change based off of feedback, input, public
I
hearings.
thought they were all written the same way.
And I think the intent may be for it to be
Thought
like
they
that.
were, but we need to make sure.
But I got it right here. It says to even get it, and we've made submittals, and they said to even get on the agenda for planning for either like just a regular building, snowball stand, whatever. I got to do traffic impact study, drainage impact study, construction plans, just to get on the agenda.
Figure out what it is, and we'll just.
Yeah, well,
I just think we just need, if we just add the word about the tentative submittal, that'll take care of
The intent when
that.
we created the two multifamily section and the commercial section was for the process to be the same as the subdivision.
That's what I heard too.
So I make a motion that we fix whatever's wrong with 126 and 127 with respect to the submittal process to make it match that of subdivisions.
Yeah, I second that.
And we introduce that tomorrow night.
Yeah, I second it.
you good? Anybody else? You got anything?
Thanks for bringing that
All
up,
right.
Billy. I forgot about
Motion
that.
by Mr. Talbot, second by Mr. Mack. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. Motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Ard.
What does that matter?
Motion to adjourn.
What does that matter?
Second by Mr. Mack. All in favor, say aye. We're good?